Hi everyone, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Here today with Tim Forshee from Forshee Law, my friend, my NFA trust attorney, defensive attorney, all that stuff, judge pro tem, former prosecutor, dude knows his stuff.
We'll find out about that, but yeah.
So I am going to ask him questions. I like to do these on camera from time to time and just jump in with questions that he hasn't prepared for.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's just a great thing, right? Attorneys love questions they're not prepared for. But today I want to talk about a couple of the dumber things that I hear people talk about and have the attorney respond to those as someone who will take your money to defend you in court.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
So this is kind of just a couple things that I hear all the time.
Okay.
And so the first one, Tim, is, well, I don't want to carry a less lethal because I'll be prosecuted for not using it. And it'll come up against me in a court if I have to use my gun. So I don't carry no OC spray or none of that stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that exact philosophy, but I got to be honest, I'm not a big fan of OC and tasers for civilian use. I'm just not. And I know you disagree, and that's one of the reasons I love having these conversations, because I get educated too. My thought on it is this. Pepper spray is lethal. It is less lethal. I notice you never call it non-lethal, which I appreciate, but a lot of people call it non-lethal. It's lethal. You hit somebody in the face that has severe asthma or an allergic reaction. I had a guy that went through my law enforcement academy, and he didn't know he was allergic to it, and he nearly died. We had to get him to the hospital immediately. I mean, and I worked on a case years ago where a severe asthmatic was sprayed by Phoenix PD, and I watched a 9.5-minute video of him drowning in his own mucus when I was working on that case, and it leaves a mark.
I do think those are incredibly rare.
They are. They're quite rare.
Incredibly rare.
Ray's syndrome, kills 1,100 people every year from taking aspirin. I mean, it is incredibly rare. There is a risk to it. But I guess what I'm saying is that since we know it is potentially lethal, then theoretically, as a civilian, I'm only justified in using it when I'm in fear for my life.
I don't think Arizona law has said that, and I don't think anywhere in the law...
It doesn't say that in the statutes. It doesn't say that.
So I think that it is not known to cause death or great bodily harm, and so it could...
Not regularly.
Right. It's not likely to cause death or great bodily harm, and can keep me out of a physical conflict where, for the vast majority of people, if he's a physical threat to me, then I don't actually have to physically hurt him. I can just spray him down, and it doesn't injure. It hurts, but doesn't injure.
My other fear, though, is that how many people that carry pepper spray have actually used it? How many people have
trained with it? Amen. All that stuff.
When you see police officers use it, I would say at least 80% of the time that it's utilized by a police officer, one or more of the police officers are also partially disabled by the pepper spray. Now, if I've got a partner, if I've got backup, if there's 4 of us taking this guy's down and one of us is blind from pepper spray, we can probably figure that out. If I'm the only guy there and I manage to blind myself with pepper spray, and I don't have the high pain threshold that some of these professional combat guys do, I'm an old fat lawyer, right? Suddenly I'm blind, I'm gasping for breath, I'm worried about not dying because I think I'm gonna die from the way my body's acting. Suddenly I'm not even thinking about the gun on my hip that the guy now has control of. I mean, it's just, I just see a lack of training. To me, it's like martial arts. People who really know what they're doing, it is a wonderful tool that you shouldn't use unless you absolutely have to, but you know when you absolutely have to. And I think that people just buy pepper spray because it's cheap and it doesn't seem like that's big. It's a particularly big moral.
Oh, I agree with training 100%.
And I think we both know there's lots of people that buy guns that don't do sufficient training, but I think the vast majority, I would say 95% of the people that buy pepper spray have never been trained on how to use pepper spray. I have been trained on how to use pepper spray, and I don't trust myself using pepper spray.
So I would argue that in a law enforcement context, most law enforcement agencies either use a fog or a cone, which is why you see the overspray and those challenges show up. That's why I recommend Stream.
Yeah,
Stream doesn't have that. It doesn't have the blowback problems. I have administered, 3 dozen OC spray with the palm and never had any kind of blowback at any kind. So those.
But again, in fairness, you're a subject matter expert on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that I'm competent in it. How about that?
No, you're more than competent.
But now, okay, so the point is maybe it's something else that's a less lethal tool, whatever the case may be. But I'm in an otherwise justified defensive shooting, and so I'm going to get prosecuted and convicted because I had something else and another option on me.
I mean, can that come up? Yes. Have I ever seen it come up? No. And the point being is that for police officers, they are required to use escalating levels of force or to prove why they were unable to use escalating levels of force. For a civilian, your job is never to take the baseball bat away from the drunk guy in the parking lot.
Right.
Your job is to stay alive. So if I'm in fear for my life, I'm going to probably run. I'm going to apologize and or run.
Right.
And if that fails and my escape routes are cut off and I can't escape any further and things are getting worse, then I'm probably going to go to my gun. In other words, I'm not going to have to approach somebody and correct their behavior like cops have to do every single day, where suddenly something then comes up. Maybe the person responds bad to the man in blue, and I have to now respond to their escalating level with my escalating levels. I can't, if the guy cusses me, I can't shoot him in the head. This isn't 1944 Stalingrad, right? So I've got to escalate. With civilians, to me, I'm not going to be there for it to escalate. I'm either going to be gone or I'm going to have a smoking gun in my hand.
And again, that idea that says, wait a minute, an otherwise justified shoot. Well, why didn't you use your OC spray? Because he was charging me with a knife, and that's not appropriate.
I didn't have time. The same thing a cop would answer. I didn't have time to escalate those levels of force. I had to go right to the ultimate use. And I think a civilian can say the same thing too. I mean, if you have a Kupiton on your keychain, a compliance device, something like that. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, except for it just starts looking a little bit police wannabe to some people, or martial artist wannabe, or Bruce Lee wannabe, and I don't think we need that stigma hanging over the prosecution, So I guess maybe it's that I've gotten older, and as I've gotten older, my knees are bad, and I'm just not. I was a college football player. I'm sure as hell not now, and so I've just had to become very more cognizant of the fact that it's either like, look, I'm either going to be over here, or I'm going to be here with a gun in my hand. I'm just not. Now, there's going to be exceptions to that, right? But I think they're probably pretty rare for civilians.
Hopefully, although when we look at the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, 80% of assaults in America every year are simple assaults, not aggravated
Absolutely,
assaults.
thank goodness.
And thank goodness for that.
But that's mostly drunks in bars. You ask my girlfriend to dance and they punch each other. That's the vast majority of assaults. Yeah,
violating the rules of stupid and getting into ego battles.
Exactly.
Right? But I do think an OC spray has a place in when some drunk is like, hey, F you, and I go, man, I don't want to fight you. And he goes, no, we're fighting. Well, okay.
Yeah, for a police officer, but again, the police officer had to approach that guy. And
I mean as a private citizen, I'm at Applebee's and some guy wants to, hey, screw you, you looked at my girlfriend. Hey, man, I didn't look at your girlfriend. I'm sorry, my bad. No, F you, we're getting in a fight right now.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to get in a fight. Back off me and get away from me, and I'm going to get out of the restaurant as soon as I can and call cops. That guy threatened me. Now, okay, so other one. This one came up recently. We had a guy who got punched in the head, sucker punched really hard, stiffened him up like a board. He fell backwards, hit the back of his head on the pavement, and that ended up proving fatal over a course of several days. And that does occasionally happen. Yeah. And I hear commenters that say, oh, that's why somebody thinks they're going to punch me, I'm going to shoot them because, that can happen, and therefore, some guy threatens to punch me, I'm going to shoot him because I know that it's lethal.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Stupid. I mean, how often does a punch to the head prove to be lethal? I would say a fraction of a percentage point. I mean, it's incredibly rare. It's just like we just talked about the pepper spray.
Right, super rare.
I say, well, it's less lethal. It can cause death. It can, but it's really rare.
Really rare.
So I don't think that, just because you think some guy might punch you, that you're justified in shooting him. I don't think any prosecutor is going to allow that to slide. No juror, including me, would allow that to slide. I mean, that's somebody who's looking for an excuse to shoot someone.
Now, I think that there could be a special case if you said, hey, I had neck surgery and I've got, pins in my neck, and my doctor has said, hey, man, you take a serious fall of any kind and it'll kill you.
Or I just saw him lay 3 people out. Right. He's Big John, Jimmy Dean singing about it. Yeah, I just saw, the proverbial, I saw him reach in and pull the heart out and take a bite out of it. Okay, well, now I think a reasonable person would feel a little different. But again, that's pretty much Hollywood types of stuff for the most part, right? So I had a student one time that we were talking about this type of a topic in one of my CCW classes, and she was a fairly young, fairly small lady, and she said, Mr. Forsey, with all due respect, I remember she called me Mr. Forsey, with all due respect, if I'm like walking into a Circle K and you're walking out and you look at me and you're walking towards me, I'm in fear for my life, I'm going to shoot you. I was like, ma'am,
so we cross each other on the way in and out?
On behalf of all big fat guys, I hope you reconsider
Please
that.
never carry a gun.
But there are some people that are, and I don't know what her background was. Perhaps she'd been abused. I didn't ask in the middle of the class. But I mean, you got to put this in perspective a little bit. A reasonable person has to fear imminent loss of life. And the fact that I looked at you wrong, or the fact that I looked like I could throw a good punch, is not sufficient justification to take a life.
So remember that triad, right, of ability, opportunity, and actual jeopardy, has to be met. Yep. Gracious sakes. So listen, okay, I think, again, this idea of, well, I'm going to be prosecuted for X or Y, I've heard that as well with people say, well, I don't want to carry a medical kit with me because then if I don't use it, then I'll be prosecuted for failure to help.
And that's wrong.
It's just not
That's flat out wrong. Yeah, I've never heard of that, never will. There's never a requirement to be a good Samaritan. Every cop carries an IFAC, and no cop, very few cops will actually do first aid before the EMTs get there because there's just too great a risk.
Yeah, there's a big risk there, and you're not legally required. You may feel morally required.
That's between you and God.
And in fact, I've used mine 5 times in car wrecks. You know, all the time you see people jammed up in a car wreck. And go get medical training, and you know what happens? You're the first responder to every car wreck in town.
Exactly.
Sheesh.
I've never once had to use my gun. I've used my fire extinguisher 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
I've used my medical kit during traffic accidents 4 or 5 times.
Right.
A couple of them were fatal, and I'm damn glad we had it. Yeah.
So stop with the stupid stuff. Please be smart.
Wouldn't that be nice if we could just say that?
Be like, stop it. Just stop it. Hit you on the nose with a paper. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, buddy. Thank you.